Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. My name is Melanie, and we are back with another Calling Creatives with Nikki from Nikki's Scrapbooking Adventure. Hi, Nikki.
Hey, how's it going? Haven't talked to you in a while.
It's been a bit, probably a month since we last talked, right? Since we last recorded. So this month we are going to be talking about organization, I believe, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like you've been doing a lot of organization on your channel already, but it's school time. And so we need to take a look at what we can use with school supplies or not to organize our room. It's the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, or not.
Not.
I use a variety of things, so we'll definitely chat about some of the different tools that I use. Speaking of which, we are going to talk about ephemera today, memorabilia ephemera, as well as die cut. The pieces that we use to make our pages pretty today. We'll talk about how I store it, and perhaps you have some tips and tricks as well that you're going to share. And make sure you come back on Wednesday and check out Nikki's channel because she is going to give you the grand tour of her space.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is the first time I'm doing it. So excited to share my space with you guys.
So it's the premiere grand tour of Nikki's space. So there we go. Be sure to head over there, subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you don't miss out because you're going to want to see all her stuff. So we're going to talk about memorabilia first because for me, that's the least complicated organization system I have in place. So before I get started though, do you keep memorabilia?
So I do for specific things. So for example, we went to our first Royals game and my son got a certificate saying that it was his first Royals game. So I have something like that, but really I'm not one of those people who picks up pamphlets and flyers unless it's like a big trip. So we went to Memphis. That's one thing we do keep is the memorabilia from that. But otherwise, I try not to bring that into my space.
So day-to-day stuff you just typically don't track or keep track of.
Mm-hmm. Now you travel a lot, right? So does that mean you have a good chunk of memorabilia?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sentimental, so like a lot of things that pass my way, I keep, especially if it's paper related, because it's so easy to tuck into a scrapbook. The question, of course, is always how do you incorporate it into your scrapbook layouts and your documenting, and that's a whole other topic for another day. So we aren't going to touch base on that, but I thought what we would talk about is what I currently do. Well, let me back the train up. How about I talk about where I started and where I am today? And it hasn't changed that significantly. And that's probably because I don't know how else to do it. So if you've got any ideas as we're talking, of course, share. And for those of you that are listening, if you have a method or a way of keeping track of your memorabilia, leave a comment below. I tend to collect just things throughout life. Like I get a letter or a card or a ticket stub. Sometimes I make a big purchase and I have a copy of the receipt. And I am a very late, this is going to sound funny, but I'm a very lazy organizer. It doesn't seem like that because that's always what I seem to be doing. But I don't like to in the moment organize. I like to just deal with it and then come back at a later day when I feel inspired to deal with it. And so traditionally what I've done is I've just had a bin that I label the calendar year and all that stuff just gets put in there. And then at some point in time, I'll take the bin and I'll, filter through it and pull out what I need and leave what I don't. So that's what I used to do. And I just used one of those iris bins and I would have one for each year.
So are you
There's a
talking
couple.
like the 12 by 12 size? They're smaller or bigger? Like what size of bin do you use?
So it
Or
was a
did you?
12 by it was a 12 by 12. And because sometimes, not so much now, but back in the heyday when scrapbooking was really big, you could get scrapbooking papers as well. Like if you went to a specific location, they would often have a scrapbooking kit that would feature that particular location. So to me, I kept all of that together so that when I went to document, say, that trip, I would have those special papers that I bought specifically for that trip, along with any memorabilia, all in one spot. And I could just pull it out and work on the project. So that's what I've done. You don't see that too much anymore. Like you don't see that kind of uh, you don't see the availability of those products anymore. So like if you were to go to a gift shop, you probably would maybe find a couple stickers and postcards, but you wouldn't find like a full-blown scrapbook kit like you used to be able to. So I used to do that. Now, if you guys have followed me for any length of time, you know that I actually don't like to dig, right? So I don't like to, filter through stuff. And so what I found, what was happening was that I would forget that I would have the memorabilia and I would scrapbook the pages. And then at some point I'd go around digging through and then I'm like, oh, I should have included XYZ in the page, right? And at that point, it just didn't seem to work. So I would end up chucking it out. So that was one of the reasons why I started to move away from it. But the biggest one was the amount of space that it took up. So I didn't have enough memorabilia to fill a 12 by 12 iris bin for each year. And then if you start mixing the years, then it gets even harder to dig through and find what you want. So that has gone to the wayside. And what I did instead was I purchased 9 by 12 envelopes, like just regular manila 12 by 10, 12 by 9 by 12. I think it was 9 by 12
Like the
envelope. And
legal size.
pardon, yeah, I guess that would be legal size, right? Yeah. And so I would just label that with the year and just throw everything in the envelope. And it was great because I could have it, just tucked on my desk. As memorabilia came, I just threw it in there. And then at some point I would have to go through and sort it out and figure out what I had. So I still hadn't solved the issue of keeping track of what I had for which event or whatever item I was documenting. So then I went to my third iteration, which was I would take page protectors and in my albums that I was scrapbooking, like the yearly album, I would insert a page protector with the memorabilia about where it would occur in the year. So when I knew that I was coming up to a particular part in the year, I would just go to that album, see if I had any memorabilia for that time period, pull it out and document it accordingly. And that worked pretty good. The only problem is that I would forget to go and look periodically, right? So I still have the issue of like I don't know what I have out there. So now we come to what I'm doing currently.
Wow,
And
this is a huge process. You've had to do trial and error for a lot of it.
well, because it's hard because like you may only have like one tiny ticket stub. So how do you keep track of that? Like how do you manage that in a way that's not too intrusive into your space that takes up so much space, but yet still that you can remember that you have it. Now, what the solution I just came up with, and I've only come up with it this year, it does take up a fair amount of space, but I'm justifying it because I'm incorporating it with planning out my pages. And I'm hoping that this will also help with my printing of photos. So that's one of my issues is printing photos. So I'm hoping that all of this solution helps with this to some extent. So what I've done is I've actually purchased these mesh bags. I guess they're just from Amazon. They're actually relatively inexpensive. I have these ones, which are, what size are these? These are 13, 9.5 by 13. So they won't fit a 12 by 12 paper in here, but they'll easily cover pretty much most memorabilia you have because maps tend to be folded and most other things are smaller than an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So there's that component of it. And then my idea is that I will also throw the pictures in here. So as I print the pictures, I'll throw them in here so I have a whole bundle when I go to do 2011 February Santa Monica dinner. I'll have the photos, the memorabilia, and everything in one spot. I can pull it out and work on it. So that's kind of the plan.
It sounds like you are really specific on that label. Are you doing one of those envelopes for each activity with memorabilia? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes and no. So combination of both. So yes, I do. It depends on how much memorabilia I have. Like, so for instance, this was a trip to an aquarium. I got quite a bit of memorabilia, so this will have its own. This does too. It's got like, you can't tell that the thickness, but this was actually a whole trip to California. I wasn't living in California at the time. So it's a bigger event than just that, but that's specifically the memorabilia for it. So that's that part. But then I'm still doing the 2022 bag. So this is all the memorabilia I collected in 2022, and it's not broken out. And the reason why is I'm never going to do this in the moment. I just
Yeah.
know myself. I'm not going to. The only time I would is something like this, which is a trip to Hawaii that I took last year in 2022. So I came back from Hawaii. I had a stack of stuff and I just put it in a bag and I was done with it. But the day-to-day stuff, I'm just not gonna do the individual bags. So I'll get a big bag like this. When I go to start the year and I start printing photos from this is when I'll break it out. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, that makes more sense. So you were talking about like ticket stubs and like the smaller stuff. The reason I don't keep memorabilia is exactly that issue. I don't even know where to store it. If I were to store it, where do I go to look for it? Am I going to remember that I have it? Like, it just doesn't work in my brain. And I decided to go forego it. And if I
Yeah.
really want to keep something, I'll take a picture of it. Because
Yeah,
then
there
when
you
I
go.
print my pictures, I'll have that if I want
Right, right. Yeah, so that's actually a great option is to take a photo of it. Doesn't take up as much space. You still have the memory of it. And for certain things like receipts, it's probably a better idea to take a photo of them anyways because they're printed on thermal paper. And so quite often over time, the printing dissolves or disappears, I guess.
it.
So that is another thing to keep in mind. That's what I'm doing for those. And then these are just going to be sitting in an Alex, not an Alex, in a calyx cube square, and I have them by date. So even though I don't necessarily scrapbook by date, these will be stored that way so I can go and pull them. When what I have been doing with my photos is because everything's digital, of course, as I accumulate them and put them onto my hard drive, I put them into date, theme, event, whatever you want to call it. And then I also will then subdivide into the photos that I want to print for layouts. And I designate in the folder if I've printed it, not printed it. And so when I'm going to start adding to it is like an E or something at the end so that I know that I have a package that when I go to print those photos, I can go pull the package, and add the photos there and I've got everything together. So that's kind of the flow that I think I'm going to try out and hopefully will solve some of my issues.
Good luck. Again, if you guys
You
have,
don't sound very confident that this is going to work.
I just have a hard time with ephemera and a memorabilia and that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
literally, you guys will see in my room tour, but right next to me, I've got one of those towers with 12 by 12 iris cases. And this is the memorabilia from the one trip I took. And it's
Yeah.
just all in there. I haven't organized it at all, but it's here.
Yeah. So
And I
when
don't
you
have
do
anything.
when you go to scrapbook the event, do you just go in and pick pictures willy-nilly and just say, okay, I'm going to scrapbook these pictures? Or do you kind of plan out, that I want these pictures in one layout and these ones in a layout? Or is it just a little bit more organic?
So this specific event was a whole week's worth of trips. So I'm going to do an 8x8 mini album. And I'll have an introduction video of that the same day that this is airing. So if you guys want to go look at that, you can. But it's going to be an 8x8 mini album. And then I'll probably do like an overview page. So there's an opportunity to do a double page layout as an overview and then a little mini album as well.
Okay. Because I was just going to say, if you do kind of plan out some of what, like when you print your photos and plan it out, you can always just, when you've got your photos printed, just intermix the memorabilia in between. You could try that as a
Mhm.
memory or as an option. The other thing, Janet RTS, with her year in review album or whatever, a month in review album, she actually does memorabilia pages at the back. So rather than trying to incorporate all the memorabilia into, the layouts, she just takes all the memorabilia and just adds a couple pages at the back of her album with everything on there, which is another great option too. If you don't want to deal with it as part of the creative process, but you still want to retain it. And there's nothing that says you have to keep everything. So even if you have a brochure from someplace, you can cut out a piece of it. You don't have to retain the entire brochure. So
And
maybe
that's
one of
why I
those things will
usually
help.
pick up the brochures is because I will cut them out and kind of use them as ephemera on my page.
Oh, that's a good idea. So and then I do still have some 12 by 12. These were from Studio Calico kits. I have not been able to source these 12 by 12 ones, or I guess they're actually probably 13 by 13 to be honest. Oh no, they're 14 by 14. Um, this is one of those ones where I went to up the coast on California, and I actually do have a scrapbook kit in here. So I still have that again because it's something very specific to a place on the coast. If I put that in my stash, I'll just forget that I have it, and then I'll be extremely disappointed that I paid money for it and didn't use it. And not have another opportunity too soon to use that. So that is what I do with my memorabilia. So let's talk about just regular ephemera, die cuts, that kind of thing. So before we get into the whole show and tell kind of thing here, and I will switch the camera so you guys can see, just a couple things I wanted to talk about organization in general, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But my big thing that I've learned over the years is that you have to understand who you are and how your brain works and how you access the product in order to organize it in the best way for you.
Yep, agreed. Completely
Right?
100% agreed.
And the tricky part is that people change. And so what works today may not work in 3 years from now. And part of that's why I'm always organizing and reorganizing is because, yes, certain things remain somewhat consistent, but there are other things that change and fluctuate. And it could just even be as simple as a new product has come on the market and that's more my go-to than something else. And so, how you access it changes, or how you think about supplies change, if you will. So I was thinking about how to talk about this in general, because really for me, how I organize my ephemera is very similar to how I even organize my papers. It's about how do you access the supplies that you have in an easily, readily available manner, right? So there's two aspects the way that I'm thinking of, and if you can think of something else, of course, let me know. But there's the physical organization, like where do you put the stuff? Right? How do you store the stuff? Do you put it in a bin? Do you have it on a shelf, or, that kind of thing? And then the other part is how do you, within that physical storage system, how do you sort it so that you can find what you need easily? So when we talk about the physical stuff, I typically, with ephemera, store it in its original packaging sometimes. I sometimes repackage it into more easily accessible pockets or bags. I've done that. I've also repackaged them into small bins, and I do that still. I also store stuff in binders. So I take it out of the packaging, store it in binders. And I also store the packages, the original packages or stuff I repackaged in bins. So I've got like a little bit of everything, right? I don't know. Do you feel the same?
Oh yeah, I definitely feel the same. And it also depends on the location in your room too, right? Like something that's going to work on my shelves is not going to work in a binder, like it depends on where you're storing it too.
Exactly, exactly. And what kind of availability you have for surfaces and that kind of thing, right?
For real, the space matters.
It does, and maximizing the space matters for sure, for sure. And a lot of why I have so many different options is because one, the industry keeps changing how they package things. So that's one of it. And then the other one is just some of the stuff I do is more labor intensive than others. And I don't always feel like doing that. And so I have to store something in the meantime until I can get to the more labor intensive part. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. But that's kind of my approach to this. So original packaging, I would say I probably don't keep much in the original packaging, just because one, I hate the sticky flap thing on most packaging. And so what I have done is I have left that stuck and I've cut the other side off so that it's just open, but then it's open. And I don't know about you, but those little ephemera pieces can, end up all over the place if you're not careful. And I'm not always careful. So that's often why I will repackage them into, let's say, a Ziploc bag or something like that. Plus, I also find those cellophane bags are not the sturdiest. And so often they'll rip. and now I've got stuff everywhere. So original if I'm really lazy. um, and then, you know, I'll upgrade it if it's warranted. Typically what happens is it'll stay in its original package until I use it the first time, and then I deal with it. So is usually what happens there. Do you keep anything in the original packaging?
I was just thinking about it. You know, 49 Market has all those beautiful film strips and the acetate pieces. Those are in the original packaging, but they're starting to really make me angry.
Okay.
And so if anybody has any Ziploc bags that are the right size for both like the leaves and then the film strips, let me know down below because I need like Ziploc bags. I can't handle the
You need it in your life. And that's actually, you just made a really good point because you said that will fit both. And that's a key thing with organizing. If you can find something that's multi-purpose but keeps the same size, it makes organizing so much easier than having multiple sizes of everything, which is also another reason why I often will repackage stuff just to get that consistency. And so it doesn't get lost. Like smaller packages will get lost if you intermix them with bigger, that kind of thing. Okay, so for bins, I love clear bins. I am a very visual person. So anyone who looks at my craft space, if you are someone of those people that doesn't like visual clutter, it's probably quite horrifying, but I do use clear bins quite a bit.
I can see several on your shelf there.
Yeah. So I just, you know, wherever I can find them, I'm not super fussed about them all being the same. In a perfect world, yeah, they would, but it does its trick. I do like that I can flip, right, and see what I have. That's really great. I don't love that these are all different sizes. Again, we'll talk about organizing within a bin in a minute. And I find different sizes makes what really how my brain really works difficult to do. And so, but I do have these.
The file system is something that the paper organization summit talked about in the very beginning of the year. Is filing, like picking through, is a lot easier than dumping, right? So if you can file it that way and pick through it, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. I'd rather flip than dig. Okay, so then I've also got clear bins like this with bins within the bins. And these are little 3x4 containers, and you'll notice that they have colors. They're color coded. So I've got one for each color. They're not super big, and that is done intentionally. Typically, these are for really small pieces, although these are larger. Typically, it's for really small pieces that I don't want to put into binders, which we'll talk about here in a minute. They're just too fussy, and so I'll just throw them in one of these bins. And if I'm looking for a small piece of ephemera, then I know to go to these bins to find them. I also use these as a placeholder. If I've been working with a package and I only have a few pieces left and I don't feel like putting them in the binder right away because that's a little bit more labor intensive, I'll throw them in here, and then every now and then I'll pull a bin out and just transfer the bigger pieces over to the binders. So that's another way I store them. These I just got off of Amazon. They are 3x4-ish size with a little snap on them. They were pretty inexpensive. And they happen to fit perfectly in this fridge bin container. That is that. We talk about color or sorting by color, and that comes to the point that I was making about how you organize within your bins or your storage solution. So I came up with a few different ways that you could organize your stuff within your physical storage. I've got color, theme, manufacturer, designer, and collection. I don't know if there's any others that you can think of.
No, I think that's pretty much how I would store it too, because I really do theme and then the collection.
Yeah. And so everybody's going to be different, of course. And this comes back to the point of knowing how you think and remember where your supplies are. So if you're someone that knows right away that the page you want is a Page Evans, paper from this and this collection, then you really should store it by designer/collection versus, color, for instance. If you had asked me before I thought about this, I would have told you that I go by color first, but that's not true. I actually go by theme first. So it's like, am I doing a Valentine's page? Then I would want Valentine themed supplies. If I was doing Christmas, I would want Christmas. And then from there, I would go into more color. typically, unless I have a specific collection in mind that I've kept separate. But that's generally how I do it. The problem is when I talk theme is I have the theme every day, which is the majority of my supplies, right? They're supplies that are not specific, that can be used for any occasion, any circumstance. And so that's where you break them, where I tend to break them down further. So the really thematic stuff has its own bin, if you will. I keep most of those in 12 by 12 iris bins. So this is my travel bin. This is all travel supplies. And it has everything in here that I would consider very specific to travel. So I've got, stickers, ephemera, puppies, no, foam stickers. I've got chipboard. So anything that's very thematic is in this particular bin.
Now it looked like you had 12 by 12 paper in there too. Is that right? Or is that chipboard? That's 12 by 12.
It's chipboard. It's
Okay.
chipboard. So this is just accessories. I'm calling them accessories. Ephemera, chipboard, stickers, chipboard, anything you want to add to decorate your page that's not paper.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got like metal and probably some ribbon, like those kinds of things.
If it's specifically travel, like not if it came in a travel collection, but if it's specifically something I would only use for travel pages, then it goes in the bin. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's the theme bin. And then we talked a little bit about the binders.
Now Janet from RTS does binders too. She does color binders, and then I think she does like themes too.
Yeah, and I've got color binders as well. So it's a little bit of everything. Again, it's just, what makes the most sense. So I put a piece of washi tape on the binder to denote what the theme is. So this has got a road, like looks like a road. So this is my travel ephemera. So yes, I have the bin. Those are all things that haven't made their way in here or don't make sense to go in here. So for instance, if I've got a 12 by 12 piece of chipboard that's brand new, I'm not going to stick it in here. I'm going to wait until I've used it mostly or partially, and then whatever's left over, I'll transfer over into here when that point comes. Same with sticker sheets. If it's a full sheet, I'm not going to transfer it into here. I will leave it as a full sheet, and then at some point, it will migrate over here when I'm down to, the last little bits or whatever I feel like at the time. But usually if it's brand new, I don't typically, or unused, I don't typically transfer it. So within this binder, and let me switch cameras. I think that might be a better view. So within this binder, I will have just random bits and pieces left over from different sticker sheets or whatever. And I'm not too fussed about it because this really is intended to be, the leftover bits, if you will, generally speaking. But like if I do have like from a specific collection, like this was mostly left over from a crepe paper collection, I will try to keep it somewhat together, but I don't worry about it a ton. Most of these are on 8.5 by 11 page protectors with a piece of cardstock in the middle. That's what I like. I have a ton of page protectors. I just add a little bit of ATG on the back, and it sticks pretty well and comes off pretty well. I haven't had any issues with using that method. If you have stickers, I have had to be a little bit more careful. If they're the thinner ones, I probably wouldn't attach them directly to the page protector. They tend to be a little bit on the sticky side and harder to peel off. But usually the cardstock stickers have worked okay. I do have like chipboard in here as well, and that just peels off pretty easily.
Yeah, that's what I used to do, but based on the recommendation from Janet, I was using those squares, like the, double-sided adhesive squares. And those like ruined the page protector. So I don't recommend those. I recommend ATG. Like you saw, it does not ruin the page protector at all.
No, it just peels really well, but it's sticky. Like I don't know how to describe how well it works. The other thing I've experimented with are these little pockets pages. These are actually designed for postage stamps, and you can get different configurations. These ones are pretty narrow. There's, I think, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 8 pockets on here. And so I have some like washi tape stickers That's what these are. So they have a backing on them, and I could individually go in and attach these to the page, but I don't want to peel the backing off and attach because they're really thin. And so I'd be concerned that the washi either would lose its stickiness over time or it would start to curl a little bit on the page protector. So that's what I was using these pockets for. And then sometimes I just get a little lazy and don't feel like doing the ATG. And so I just use the pockets as well to store some of the pieces in. And that's been working pretty good too. This is just a little bit more expensive, so it's not as cost effective as the page protectors. These are also great for if you have any vellum, like what do you do with vellum? So again, you could just tuck it in. You don't have to worry about applying adhesive and making sure that that works. The other thing that I've done in here is if I do have a collection that I want to keep together, I will group it together and then I will add a little piece of the packaging on here so I know that that's what that collection is for. I will typically do this if I'm keeping the paper together as a collection. So I know that I have this paper collection elsewhere. So if I'm using that, I know I can come to the travel section and find adventure to find the ephemera pack. And even though this is not used, I've never used this, I do still transfer them into here because one, I like looking at ephemera this way better than dumping it and sorting it through. And I also like having it in the binder so that I don't have to use it with just the collection. If I see something in here on another travel page, I have it readily available, versus if I stored this with the collection, I would never think to go and look for it.
A lot of work though.
It is. This is labor intensive, but I will tell you, since moving to the binder system, I use ephemera way more, way more, because I'm also what I call myself a lazy scrapbooker. So besides the pocket page, this is something I just started recently. This is not my idea. Jennifer McGuire, the guru of all things paper crafting, she posted that she was using those old school magnetic album pages to store die cuts of like sentiments for cards. And I thought, oh, I bet you I could use that for my ephemera pieces. So this doesn't require any sticking on it. You can just add it to the page and then cover it and you're good to go.
I tried the same thing with ephemera, and I did it for the Blooming Wild collection. And the way that I store my ephemera, I put it in the package, like in a 13 by 13 bag with it, and it's not transportable. Like all of my pieces would fall out. And so you need to keep those kinds of magnetic sheets within a binder so that you don't bend them.
Oh, okay. So just the accessing it back and forth would cause this probably to come up and loosen. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I just started doing this, and I don't know that I would do this for everything. But back in the day, one of the things I used to hate about the magnetic album was that they did lose their stickiness. And so when you had photos in them, you would pick up and everything would fall out. So word of caution, that could happen with these, but in the meantime, it is faster than adding adhesive on the back of all your die cut pieces. So it is an option. So within the theme, I do have stuff stored by collection and by manufacturer. This is how I get around those thinner stickers, is I just leave them on the sheet and I just attach the whole backing and everything to the page. That doesn't work for all stickers. Sometimes they're really super slick and the adhesive won't stick, but in this case they did. So that's what I've done there. And I even will put, brads and stuff in here. I'm not as segmented as like Janet does. She has like a sticker section, a chipboard section, that kind of thing. I intermix everything because to me, these are all this. I would use these in the same way. So why have multiple places to go? I'd rather just see everything from the collection, from puffies to chipboard to die cuts, and it's one spot.
You've got a good collection there.
I don't know why I felt like I didn't have any travel supplies, but I clearly have plenty.
Well, this is a good reminder that you don't need to go buy more travel stuff, right? You need to use what you have.
I don't need to buy anything. Let's be real. Let's be real. I do not need to buy anything. Doesn't
Although
mean
I'm
it's
going to be on the hunt for that road washi now. It's so cool.
so that is by theme. And then I do have some where, so that's theme by collection, where I just have some by collection um, and by manufacturer. And this is what I consider more for the everyday. So again, but it's the same approach, right? If I have this paper collection that I'm keeping as a paper collection, I try to keep the ephemera as its own thing. And then eventually when I get down to a few pieces, whatever's left will go move over into the colored section at some point, and then the whole page will just come out. But you could come in here and you could say, oh, you know, this needs to go in the blue section and not put it in here. You could do that too. For me, it's just easier to just do the whole package on one sheet and be done with it.
Yeah.
And then when I get down to fewer pieces, I'll move it. And at that point, it's easy because they already have the adhesive on the back. So it's just take it off, move it to the purple section, and you're done.
You put
But
a lot of time into these binders.
I
Like,
do, but you know what? It's one of those things I do when I'm watching TV or I just need a no-brainer. So it's time consuming, but I don't feel like it's taken away from anything because I'm doing it at the same time I'm doing TV watching or whatever. Um, but yeah, it's to me this is worth it because of the way my brain works. So, and the way my process is. If this is not something that you think, you know, you would ever find valuable, don't invest the time in it. It's not worth it then, right? Do what makes sense for you in your process.
mhm. I will say I found that scrapbookers are the best multitaskers, you know. Fussy cutting things in the car while you're on travel, or you're watching TV and you're fussy cutting or stitching or, you know.
Exactly, exactly. I just find that, you know, my brain doesn't stop. So even when I'm watching TV, I need to have something to keep me going. So and then the last two binders, or the last kind of binders I wanted to show, were the color binders. So I actually have two pink binders on the go. I probably should have upgraded to a bigger one. I purposely have not done all of my color binders in big binders like the themes because those get quite heavy. And again, it's all about quick, easy, convenient. And the lighter something is, the more likely I'm going to go to pull it out. If it feels like it's too much of a job to pull it out, I'm not going to. So um, those bigger binders would not be my first choice. I've just used them because they were in my stash. So rather than go and buy more, I've just repurposed them. So the colors, I have just, you know, your typical rainbow set of colors. Same deal, is they're just a mix and match. And you'll notice it doesn't mean that the color has to be like a solid pink to be in the pink binder. I just pick a color that I think I'm drawn to or represents the majority of the image, and I stick it in and just be done with it. So the other thing I've done with the pink, within the pink section, is I've actually have a Maggie Holmes section. I have a Paige Evans section, and I have a pink fresh. Now, could I intermix these all together? Absolutely. But because I have a lot of both of these, or all three of these manufacturers slash designers, and they have a very unique style, it works for me to have them separate. But they're still in the pink section. So even if I'm, you know, looking for something pink, I'll just flip through them. Doesn't mean just because I'm working on something, I can't use a Maggie Holmes die cut. But if I'm looking for something specific with Maggie Holmes aesthetic, I know exactly where to go and find them.
So do you do that for all of your colors? Like Paige has all the bright bold colors. I think probably her favorites though are blue and pink.
Yeah.
Do you have a section in the blue that's Paige Evans then?
Yes. Yeah. So all of the color sections will have, if I have, well, I don't have a ton of Maggie Holmes, but I've got enough of it. So wherever I have stuff, I will put hers, Paige Evans, and Pink Fresh, which is one of my favorite manufacturers. So I have a ton of their stuff. And it really just is by feel. You know, if I start gravitating towards another one, let's say 49 and Market, I may have a 49 and Market section because they have a very unique look as well. And so if I'm looking for that kind of mixed media artistic look, then it makes sense to have all their pink supplies together in one section.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Adding another layer so that you can just grab it if you can.
Yeah. So I need a pink die cut, pull this over, flip through it, you know, but I could see all of it in one spot. I don't have it buried, you know, in different collections throughout my space. Yeah, so it works for me. But again, if you're someone who likes to use a collection with the coordinating collection pieces, this is not this is not necessarily for you. For sure not. You may find though that even just taking a collection and adding it to a page protector, like to make it flat and storing that with a collection is beneficial. It just takes up a little bit less space overall, but there's still the investment of time. So
My
just
time is too
depends.
precious to invest in the binders.
There you go. And that's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of this hobby, is that there's room for everybody and for every way of thinking and storing and organizing.
Are there other ways, or is that pretty much your ways?
I think that's pretty much it. Pretty much it. Just bins within bins, binders, packaging. Oh, actually there is, I'll show you this. So it's still a bin, and here's those baggies I was telling you about where I repackage them. This is my Felicity Jane bin.
That's a
For the
bin.
most part. For the most part. There's a few things in here that aren't Felicity Jane, but definitely like all of this back section is Felicity Jane. And what I did with those is I actually did by color. So she has, or they had a very distinct color palette. And so this way I could see across all collections, you know, what I had in yellow, turquoise, you know, mint green or whatever. So that is what I've done with them. Would I, could I, should I put them in binders? Maybe, but I just, again, like I said, like we have talked about, it does require some time to do it. And for the most part, this is working okay for this. So we'll leave it until maybe one day I feel like being crafty and I don't have any ideas, and then I do organizing. Crafty
And that's
organizing.
what'll be on YouTube too, is when you don't have any ideas, you add some organizing.
Exactly.
Oh, I might need to send you my Felicity Jane. So I worked in a couple layouts and I'm getting really frustrated. I don't have enough ephemera. And I don't have enough ephemera in the colors. So that system right there for the Felicity Jane works because their colors are all the same across their collections. And even though I have several of their collections, I just don't have enough.
Yeah. And it's a very soft palette for the most part. I mean, every now and then they'll throw in something a little bit more saturated, but and don't quote me on the terms, it's saturated or whatever. I don't know what those terms are, but anyways, you know what I mean? Every now and then they'll have something that's a little bit darker, but generally they are run more on that pastel soft kind of side, which is not common, really, if you think about
Nope.
it.
That and I have a boy. So it's hard to use those.
Yeah, I could see that because it definitely has a feminine feel to it for sure. But that's pretty much it. I mean, obviously, I've got other bins that have stickers and stuff like that in them, but mostly what you see behind me, these are all alpha stickers. Those are all alphas. This little bin is stickers, and then I've got two small bins with ephemera, but everything else is alphas and enamel dots, finishing touches, that kind of thing. And those are stored by color. So again, because color is one of my ways that I access the supplies. So color's a big deal for me.
Well, thanks so much for sharing.
And I can't wait to see your room, which is going to be up on Wednesday. I'm going to have a sneak peek right now. But for the rest of you, make sure you head over there because you don't want to miss out. She specifically cleaned up for this. So
It wasn't that bad to begin with, but I did vacuum for you so you don't see the little beans all over my floor because, it's a multi-purpose room.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. Well, that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Of course, if you've got any tips and tricks that you have for storing your ephemera, whether it's memorabilia or die cuts, etc., leave a comment below. We'd love to hear and share with the community. Thanks so much. And until next time, happy crafting.